Following is a broadcast from the global authority in mixed martial arts.
The Sherdog
Radio Network. The following is a special broadcast exclusively from the Sherdog Radio Network. SRN. You're getting beat down after the bell.
Of UFC 210, Cormier versus Johnson 2 on the Sherdog Radio Network. Hey everybody, I'm TJ DeSantis. Welcome to the special edition of the best post-fight analysis in the business. Well, maybe it's not, but we like to call it that. I'm TJ DeSantis, along with my MMA Evolution pal, one Mr. Caleb Quinn, and I don't even know where to start, Caleb. I feel like we're at one of those restaurants where you get a meal that is like far bigger than anyone should order, and you don't even know where to take the first bite. I guess we'll start in the main event. Anthony Rumble Johnson comes out with one of the more odd styles to take on Dan Cormier and tries to out-wrestle the Olympic-level wrestler. And ultimately, it ends the way the first match did with a rear naked choke. First off, how are you this evening? What's going on?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm about to kick off spring break, and so I've got a week off of school. I can train all I want, sleep all I want. I can come out to California and visit you if I wanted.
That's probably not happening because you haven't asked yet, and I haven't invited you. So I did invite you on Beatdown After the Bell, and I appreciate you for joining me. So let's talk about it. Anthony Rumble Johnson, in one of the more strange instances that I could imagine, came out. I mean, I don't know what's more strange, the fact that he tried to out-wrestle Dan Cormier or the fact that he retired from out of nowhere following the conclusion of the match. Let's talk about this match before we talk about the decision from Anthony Johnson to retire. It was a fight that, when you look at it on paper, it's still very much grappler versus striker. But when you watched it tonight, it looked like the striker wanted to be the grappler. What were your thoughts when Anthony Johnson tried to get Dan Cormier down in the first 90 seconds of the fight and then repeatedly went back to that throughout the contest?
Well, I'm sure it was the same as yours and everyone else. What is he doing? Like I was pulling the hair out of my head. Like, what is he doing? And I just feel like it's so hard to sit back now knowing that he was planning on retiring after this fight and like analyze this fight, because I got to wonder where his head was at. Was he thinking that I don't want to take any damage in this fight? Did he get knocked out bad in practice or something, and coming into this fight, he knew it was going to be his last one. He didn't want to get knocked out again. Like there's just so many unanswered questions due to that post-fight announcement that he made.
One thing that I thought was very unique about Johnson's approach here was the fact that when he clinched up with Cormier too, like, it's one thing to sort of dirty box with a grappler. It's another thing to actually try to outright wrestle him, and that's what Johnson was doing. He was looking to get a takedown up against the fence. He wasn't looking to pressure Cormier. He wasn't looking to fight him the way that, say, Randy Couture fought Chuck Liddell the first time that they fought. This was Anthony Johnson thought he was going to surprise Dan Cormier, get him down to the floor, and then do what with him? I'm not exactly sure. But if you look at it, I think Dominic Cruz said it best on the broadcast. He said, this is perfect for Daniel Cormier because this is grappling, this isn't striking. And for Rumble Johnson, a guy who has been criticized for his gas tank throughout his entire career, the best way to beat him is to make him wear your weight. Now, Daniel Cormier didn't have to make Anthony Johnson wear his weight, but he did, wrestle in defense, and that was enough, I think, to suck some of that gas and ultimately suck some of the power out of the punches from Anthony Johnson. Now, it wasn't as bad as the first time. AJ wasn't gassed beyond belief, and Mark Henry wasn't screaming at him, don't quit, or Henry Hoof, rather. It was an interesting approach, but, what did we learn here? Because I'm still left sort of scratching my head going, why on earth would you fight like this? Now, we're going to get to the middleweight matchup at the co-main event between Gegard Mousasi and Chris Weidman, but there was a lot to be made of Mousasi trying to take down Chris Weidman. I can understand why he did that, because if you go back to the Rockhold fight, when Luke Rockhold got on top of Chris Weidman, Weidman was in a world of trouble. So Mousasi, who had Weidman hurt, you could say, okay, well, if he takes him down and he gets to the floor, then maybe he can, basically pound in the coffin nails if he is already hurt and wobbled. Anthony Johnson to initiate a clinch and then continue to sell out for it. Again, one of the more head-scratching things I've seen in mixed martial arts in a minute.
Well, I kind of sat there at first and I was like, well, maybe, because the criticism with strikers is always you got to set them up. You got to make them think about the takedown or at least threaten with the takedown. And then you'll be able to commit to your strikes a little bit better. And so I thought maybe that's what he was, threatening the takedown so that DC might, drop his guard a little bit to open himself up to those strikes. But you're right. He wasn't just threatening. Like, he was really going for that takedown. He was really putting in probably too much effort for that takedown. And it was more than just a threat, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. Dan Cormier, probably the most hated guy inside the building tonight once again. It's interesting how he can't get fans. It's similar to that of Tim Sylvia. I don't think that Daniel Cormier rubs me the wrong way at all. I understand why maybe he rubs some other people the wrong way, but Joe Rogan brought it up on the broadcast too, basically saying maybe he gets booed until John Jones and him fight again and he beats John Jones. That's the only way to sort of get that quote-unquote stink off of him. John Jones in the crowd tonight. It sounds like he's going to be coming back here in July. Looking at Jones, who's from the greater Buffalo area, he was getting booed just as much as Daniel Cormier. If you go back to their build up to UFC 200, John Jones had more fanfare than Daniel Cormier. So I guess, and this is the oddest thing I'm ever going to say, especially when John Jones' name is mentioned here, because Jones is a polarizing individual and seems to make a lot of mistakes and do dubious things. I guess the fans think that when Dan Cormier and John Jones fight, you cheer for the lesser of two evils, and for the majority, it's John Jones being the lesser of two evils. But Daniel Cormier, John Jones, do you think that, does that make sense? Yes, obviously it makes sense. Cormier lost to him, but from a matchmaking standpoint, Jimmy Manuwa was in the crowd tonight. Do you just make the fight that everybody wants with John Jones, or do you make Johnny Bones have a tune-up fight before fighting the champ?
For Johnny Bones, I think it's a better idea to have a tune-up fight. I think for the fans, not really. I don't think any of us are like, oh, we want to see John Jones fight someone else. But at the same time, we don't really want to see DC fight anyone else. Mm-hmm. That's the fight that needs to happen. That's like they'll say is the money fight. But they even in the broadcast, it was like it's hard for us to really say like, oh, we need to give Jimmy Manuwa a shot because Rumble knocked him out, or Gustafsson, we need to get him in there. Well, Rumble knocked him out, and Rumble just retired after being beat by DC for a second time. And so it kind of creates this distance between DC and everyone else. And the only real question mark, the only real person that we see, in that vicinity of being able to beat DC is John Jones. And so I think that's why everyone looks to him as, no, this is the guy who we need to have fight.
Tell us what you think. 844 Sherdog is the number. It is 844-743-7364. You can also email TJ DeSantis at Sherdog.com, on Twitter as well, at TJ DeSantis and at Caleb Dude. He is Caleb Quinn. I am TJ DeSantis. This is Beatdown After the Bell of UFC 210 on the Sherdog Radio Network. I think that before you make Daniel Cormier and John Jones too, it's got to be a tune-up fight for John Jones for a variety of reasons. One, you look at Cormier, who is getting married. More than anyone, there's a whole lot that goes into getting married. And when you have the opportunity to have a bigger wedding and to afford a bigger wedding, there's even more that goes into it. And I have a feeling that Dan Cormier is probably, not pulling any punches when it comes to putting on a wedding. He's got family from all over the place, friends from all over the place. He lives in the Bay Area. He's from Louisiana. So obviously there's a lot of things going on there. But when I look at what's going on here with John Jones, when he came back, when he fought Ovince St. Preux to win the interim championship, it was a dominant fight, but if you remember, it was a fight that a lot of people were like, oh, prime John Jones absolutely destroys Ovince St. Preux, and the fight went the distance. Jones really didn't pull the trigger the way that he needed to. And, I remember doing this radio show following that fight going, man, Daniel Cormier's got to be the most bummed out person in the world right now, because if he were in this fight, this John Jones is at least more beatable than the John Jones he fought the first time. It's been a long time. It's been a long while now since John Jones fought. I don't know where he's at. I don't know if ring rust is a thing truly for him, because he's still the most dominant 205-pounder we've ever seen. I would just like to make sure that when these guys do fight, when they do get in the cage, there's no question that both of them are as good as they can be.
Well, I think in a lot of ways this is really working out for DC. DC is, for the most part, still relatively young in his career, not necessarily by age, but just by experience. And he's getting better and better. Whereas a lot of fighters, once they get to a certain point, they're as good as they're going to get. And that's something that I've watched with DC, and seeing him throwing head kicks and seeing him do more and evolve more and become a better striker. That makes him, and that puts him in a better position to beat John Jones. He's not as one-dimensional. He's not going to have to rely on this or that. And really, when he fought John Jones was taking him down. He took away the one thing that DC had in that fight, and he beat him. And now that DC is starting to have more things, he's going to be able to set up that takedown better. He's going to be able to fake the takedown and set up his striking better. He has more options, and he's getting better and better and better. Whereas I think a lot of people, if they would have had the rematch, a year ago or even 6 months ago, people would be like, oh, John Jones is going to kill him. John Jones is going to kill him. But by the time that this fight happens, John Jones is going to be sitting around so long that you could say ring rust isn't a thing, but getting the rust off of his body, getting the rust off of his mind, and getting him sharpened into that sword of a champion is going to be a much more difficult and long process than I think people realize. Whereas DC, he's always been in that. He's always had that mentality. He's always tried to keep himself in shape. I'm glad that you brought up the wedding thing, because they mentioned in the broadcast tonight that he actually put off the cake tasting until after this fight. That's how much weight he needs to cut. If you saw him weigh in, he looked terrible at the weigh-ins. And there's a lot of controversy even over, pressing on the towel or whatever. But he's going to need to take some time off of this wedding just to get his body down into being conditioned to where it can make that 205-pound weight limit. Whereas I'm worried about John Jones. I'm worried about anybody who takes an extended period of time off from competition, an extended period of time off from cutting weight, and then tries to jump right back in, especially jumping into the deepest water with the biggest shark.
Right. And call me crazy, but I feel like if you are going to fight for a title, you've been off for a while, you've been stripped of, he's been stripped of his undisputed UFC light heavyweight championship. He was awarded an interim light heavyweight championship. That has since been stripped. To me, you still have to do something to earn another title fight. If there was ever an exception to this rule, yes, it's John Jones, the greatest 205-pound fighter that the sport has ever seen. But I still believe that you don't get to jump the line when you've been inactive for, largely he's been active for over 2 years. He had the Ovince St. Preux fight, but it's been a terribly long time away from consistent fights, consistently getting ready and living the fighter's lifestyle. And I just would like to see him fight anybody. Fight a Jimmy Manuwa. Fight anybody that we feel could be a fight to put him into true contendership. Do something to earn the number one contendership at this point. Again, if there's an exception to the rule, it's John Jones. If he wants to fight sooner than Cormier may allow him to, with what he's got going on, fight anybody else. So it just makes a lot of sense on a variety of levels for me.
So this GSP thing must just be eating a hole in you.
Well, it's a money fight, quote unquote, right? And there are exceptions to rules, and especially when you have this much debt that the UFC reportedly has. There's a lot of money that the UFC needs to make to stay current. with everything that they have going on. But I mean, yeah, I said the same thing when Frankie Edgar fought Jose Aldo for the featherweight championship the first time when he had moved down from 155. It's like, you've never fought at the weight before. Why do you get a title fight? I mean, he probably is, in a roundabout way, the number 1 or number 2 lightweight of all time, that being Frankie Edgar. But still, like, no one was saying that, oh, this is a fight that must happen because Frankie Edgar's fighting for legacy. And there wasn't any other real interesting opponents for Aldo at the time. So why not give Frankie Edgar a title fight? Still, I think, I mean, Kenny Florian moved down to 45, and they made him fight, who'd they make him fight? The tough Brazilian kid. Why can't I remember his name?
Yeah, the one who did the gun for his, salute.
Why can't I remember his name? Anyway, tell me on Twitter, at TJ DeSantis. I can look it up online, I guess, too. But I want to pull up what's going on here with Chris Weidman and Gegard Mousasi. One of the more strange fights that you're going to see for a variety of reasons. It was very competitive. I really liked the way it was shaping up. Weidman was doing what he needed to do on the feet to survive with Mousasi, despite eating some punches. The jab was working for Gegard, but so was the takedown for Weidman. He was getting it. He was controlling position, and it was interesting. Mousasi was doing what he needed to do to get back to the feet. I like the way he was getting his butterflies in and then inducing a scramble and getting up. I mean, that's the type of fighter that you need to see, or type of fight you need to see from Gegard Mousasi if he's going to continue to rise the ranks at 185 and potentially fight for a title. This is a guy that in the past has become very complacent with being put in positions, getting grinded on, and not necessarily taking a lot of damage, and still even throwing up some damage of his own from his back, but not enough to win rounds. That Gegard Mousasi is not going to get past the elite level fighters of a Ronaldo Jacare Souza or a Yoel Romero, who, both of those guys, I think Mousasi will fight. I mean, for Jacare, it'll be their third go-around. And Romero, I mean, who knows will be wearing the title if Mousasi should fight for it. But we get this odd position, bit of a scramble induced, and you have Weidman basing out with his hands on the floor. Mousasi goes to knee the head. The first knee was legal. The second knee, according to Dan Miragliotta, appeared to be illegal with Weidman's hands, both of them being on the floor. The replay showed that it was not illegal. Now, this is where everything goes pear-shaped here. Dan Miragliotta inserts himself when he shouldn't have. I'm not mad at him for that. Things like that are going to happen. You are human. You have to make a judgment call. And not only do you have to make a judgment call, but you're doing it under very bright lights with very fast-moving, skilled fighters in front of, 15,000 people. Okay? There's a lot of pressure there. You make mistakes. In baseball and stick and ball sports, referee error is just something that happens from time to time. So I'm not mad that Miragliotta made a mistake at all. Everything that happened after that mistake, that's what I'm upset about. It starts with Miragliotta telling Chris Weidman that he has some time to recover here. He goes outside. I can hear him on the broadcast go, look at the replay and tell me if it was legal. You cannot do that. You have no right, according to the unified rules in the state of New York, to do that. You do not get to seek the advice of anyone else looking at the replay. You do not get to look at the replay yourself, okay? So that is a gigantic mistake. A gigantic mistake because the way that Miragliotta handles everything following someone telling him that the strike was legal, terrible. Also on the broadcast, I could hear him tell Weidman, now there's one caveat here. If he was talking to the doctor, it's fine, but I don't believe he was talking to the doctor. He told Weidman, you have 5 minutes to recover. X amount of minutes have passed. That is not true. You have 5 minutes for a low blow. I posted these up on my Twitter right now. The UFC on their website has a copy of the unified rules. And let me tell you what the rules say about 5 minutes. First off, let's read the low blow foul. A fighter who has been struck with a low blow is allowed up to 5 minutes to recover from the foul as long as the ringside doctor has the opinion that the fighter may possibly continue in this contest, okay? Here's how it reads for a foul other than a low blow. If a fighter is fouled by a blow that the referee deems illegal, the referee should stop the action and call for time. The referee may take the injured fighter to the ringside doctor and have the ringside official examine the fighter as to their ability to continue on in the contest. The ringside doctor has up to 5 minutes. The doctor has up to 5 minutes to make their determination. If the ringside doctor determines that the fighter can continue in the contest, the referee shall, as soon as practical, restart the fight. Unlike the low blow foul rule, the fighter does not have up to 5 minutes of time to use at their discretion and must continue to fight when instructed to by the referee. So this is my problem. Things lately have been completely botched when it comes to this stuff. Herb Dean had a bad issue when it came to the Jake Ellenberger and Jorge Masvidal fight. We saw the Tim Means bout with the illegal knee being questioned, where Mark Ratner didn't appear to know the rule. Joe Rogan was confused. And now tonight, like, the rules are here. They're online. They're accessible. Like, we worry so much, Caleb, about referees doing things from a safety standpoint, about stoppages and making the right judgment calls in brief milliseconds. I get that. We should worry about that stuff. We shouldn't have to worry about this. This is read the rules, understand the rules, quiz each other on instances like this where you have to make a judgment call. The fact that Dan Miragliotta seemed to have no idea that Weidman didn't have 5 minutes, especially if now he's believing that the rule or that the foul wasn't actually a foul. Weidman, was taking time. I mean, I heard some people saying that Weidman was milking it and he was asking for more time than he really needed. And then when the fight was called, he seemed to be very upset and all of a sudden was a lot more clear on everything than he was a moment ago when he thought he was getting time. That's you call it what you want. I call it a savvy move. If a referee, like if a doctor is asking you, can you see? Can you continue? You say, what? What? Sorry, I can't hear you. What? That allows you 15 more seconds to catch your breath. Like, these things are underhanded, maybe, fine. But that's gamesmanship, in my opinion, especially if you're tired, especially if you're gassed. I just don't know why Dan Miragliotta, A, asked for someone to tell him what the replay said, B, why whoever looked at the replay told him anything, C, why he thought that Chris Weidman had 5 minutes to his discretion to come back from a foul that apparently is no longer a foul because he saw the replay. And if we're not going to follow the rules at all, just restart the damn fight. Like, you have to stop the fight because it was a legal blow and the referee intervened, therefore the fight needs to be stopped, which is what Herb Dean asked in the Ellenberger and Masvidal fight, going, oh, what am I supposed to do? Well, you stop the fight, so it's over. Okay, it's over. You've already essentially abandoned the protocol here in what you're supposed to do in this situation. Let's just keep abandoning it and go back and give everybody what they want. Gegard Mousasi wanted to continue. The fans inside the arena wanted it to continue. Chris Weidman largely deserved for it to continue. What a just miscarriage of justice, honestly, all the way around. What they did here was, again, the most egregious thing that I think people are thinking about is, oh, Dan Miragliotta made a mistake and called a legal blow illegal. I'm so over that and so forgiving of that. Everything else that followed, it's a travesty. Sorry, you can talk now.
Well, you bring up a lot of good points, and there are a lot of counters to what I would have thought. First, let me ask you, if he hadn't have stepped in, let's say that the knees were thrown. On the broadcast, initially, they were saying they were illegal knees, and the fight had continued. Gegard gets the stoppage, and then they can go back and they can look at that and say, oh, wait, we need to file a grievance with the commission. This was an illegal knee, and then they can get it turned into a no contest. So that's like the opposite of what happened tonight. How would that have been for you?
I mean, that would have been something that's done in a hearing, essentially. Like, you're not going to be able to make that call right now.
But I mean, as the referee, like, do you bank on, okay, the commission will figure it out, or because I'm assuming that he couldn't see from where he was at because he was pretty much directly behind them when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it was questionable, like he saw that the hands were down, and so like there's this like he has to make a decision.
Right?
Does he intervene now? Or does he let them sort it out later? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Well, here's the thing. This is what has to happen, and there's no sort of hypothetical anymore because things happened, and things have to happen because Dan Miragliotta decided to step in. Miragliotta stepped in because he thought that the fight was changing course due to an illegal strike intentionally thrown by Gegard Mousasi. So he needs to halt the contest, take the position away from Mousasi, check on the safety of Chris Weidman, call the doctor to see if Weidman can continue. If Weidman can continue, he is to do so following the conclusion of the doctor's examination, which cannot take any longer than 5 minutes. And then, because the foul was intentional, he needs to take a point away from Gegard Mousasi. Literally the opposite of everything that I just said happened. Literally.
So you're behind him 100%. Like, he did the right thing.
No. There is no opinion of doing the right thing. Again, Miragliotta stepped in because he thought the foul was illegal, okay?
Right.
So the foul needs to be treated as illegal. No matter what, if he's wrong, no matter if what everyone around him in the cage is telling him.
No. I'm not getting into, like,
Sure.
whether or not it was a legal knee or an illegal knee. But, like, as a referee, like, he did the right thing.
Again, he decided to step in. I don't get to decide whether or not he steps in, and then the protocol needs to take place because he stepped in. What you're saying is, should he just let it go and let the position continue? I don't know. That's a judgment call in that moment, and the only person that gets to make that call is Dan Miragliotta, and he has to base it on what he can see.
Right. So that's why I kind of support him stepping in, because even with me, like I said, he was behind. He could only see so much of it.
Sure, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. He can, quote, only see so much of it. You can't call a halt to a contest unless you see a foul. So if Dan Miragliotta stepped in, I sure as hell hope that he saw with 100% certainty a foul. Because if he doesn't know if he saw a foul and he's intervening, man, I'd rather be wrong and let the fight continue than be wrong and stop the fight. That's just me.
That was kind of what I was trying to get at.
That's just me. But I don't know what Dan Miragliotta saw. He seemed to be very clear that he felt that the strike was illegal. Therefore, he stepped in. That's on him. That's on his decision-making. And I'm not mad at his decision-making. It's not about, oh, should I do this or should I not do it? It is, did I see a foul? Was that a foul? Yeah, it was a foul. I'm stepping in. Not, was it, I don't know if it was a foul. If you can't, if the answer is, I don't know it was a foul or not, then you don't do anything. Because you need conclusive evidence to step in and stop the contest for a brief moment. And I'm guessing that Dan Miragliotta saw what he believed to be a foul. That's why he stepped in. And again, the protocol needs to go as followed.
Right. So then when it came time to all of this was happening, you saw that it was a legal knee. Were you like, they need to restart the fight, or were you like, they need to call the fight?
No, again, Dan Miragliotta treated the foul as an illegal blow. So protocol would dictate that you need to treat it as an illegal blow. You don't get to change your mind.
No. I'm saying, like, you're sitting there watching this happen. Were you, when you saw that, okay, this was not an illegal knee, were you hoping they would restart the fight, or were you hoping they would call the fight?
It doesn't matter what my opinion is. It matters what the unified rules say.
This is exactly why people are listening to this show right now, TJ, because they want to know your opinion.
Okay, my opinion doesn't matter. And really, again, my opinion was, it doesn't matter what my opinion is. Like, I hate to keep harping on this issue. The rules make it so opinions don't matter. To me, when I saw the replay, it was unfortunate that Dan Miragliotta stepped in. I wish he wouldn't have stepped in because the blows weren't illegal. But he did step in. So, again, followed the damn rules. Miragliotta didn't seem to know the rules. Just like Mark Ratner wasn't completely clear on the Tim Means rule. It's mind-numbingly hard to wrap my head around that people that are officiating and refereeing bouts have no idea how that they're supposed to take action in these odd occurrences. Yes, this doesn't happen a lot. I've watched a lot of mixed martial arts. A lot of that mixed martial arts I've watched with you, Caleb, and we don't have these issues. It's just not something that has happened. For whatever reason, these oddities have happened frequently over the last year. The best way to fix this is I'm a big believer in logic, okay? And logic here in this situation says, first off, embrace technology. Have it so the referee can look at the replay, and there's no confusion there on what Murgliata saw, what someone tipped him off, etc. So let's embrace the technology that we have from multiple angles and high definition. On top of that, let's make knees to the head of a grounded opponent completely legal. It's Pride Never Die week on UFC Fight Pass. Pride had a lot of knees to the head of a grounded opponent. And short of Mark Coleman and Alan Goez, which was a terrible matchup, weight disparity, I don't recall knees to the head of a grounded opponent like altering someone's career where I was like, this is really bad. You can bring up the Gan McGee thing. That was an IFC, I believe, in New Jersey. And again, I believe there was a gigantic weight disparity. Knees to the head of a grounded opponent, generally nobody sits there in the turtle position and takes a lot of punishment. They move. You fought in Minnesota when, we could have had any rules back when you were fighting in Barnes, Caleb. Knees to the head of a grounded opponent were completely legal. I remember I saw you knee the head of a kid named Travis Plant over and over and over and over and over again, and he continued, and he was fine. I don't know what his state is these days, but the bottom line is you fought with knees to the head of a grounded opponent. You fought where they've been illegal. What did you prefer, and what do you think the rule should state?
I prefer knees for sure. And if you remember in my very first fight, like I had an arm bar, and he had kind of cradled up the arm bar and started firing knees into my head for about 2 minutes, It's true. And so I've been on both ends of it, and I prefer the knees. And if I have to make a choice between knees and elbows, I'll still take knees. Or even if I have to take like kicks on the ground, I'd still take them over elbows. But that's just mainly because elbows cut, and kind of like you don't need as much space to throw the elbow, and the more space that you have, the more opportunity it creates for jiu-jitsu and wrestling and other martial arts to kind of like blend into that gray area. So I think that like that's where my kind of prejudice against elbows comes from. But I'm not like trying to tell people we need to take those out. They're already in. Let's keep them in. Knees on the ground and soccer kicks. The soccer kick thing is people just think it looks too brutal. You really have to be in a bad position to get caught with a soccer kick. And usually if you do get caught with a soccer kick, that's the end of the fight. It doesn't go too much further than that.
Exactly right. I think that if you're soccer kicking your opponent, the fight's probably over already. I don't like soccer kicks all that much. It does look bad. And also I don't think that soccer kicks are honestly all that effective of strikes. They happen very quickly. Person's moving. Unless it's, Brad Kohler and Babalu Sobral. And again, that was a completely different time. Soccer kicks.
Oh, did you see Roger Horta get soccer kicked?
Yeah, and won.
That was a bad one too.
Yeah.
But again, that was, you had really messed up to find yourself in basically a referee's position or on your all fours like a dog with your opponent in front of you, lined up for a straight up kickball kick. Like that's, again, you really had to mess up to get in there.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. And I don't know. But knees to the head of a floored individual need to be a thing. Think a lot of people talk about how it would change the pace of a fight when a fighter shoots in and gets sprawled out on. The knees are going to make that flattened man move a lot quicker. But think about how much more effective side control would be. Granted, if you're going to posture up and try to knee the head of a downed opponent from that position, they might move, they might get up, but doesn't that speed along the process as well? Because, side control, while it's a dominant position, it's not the best position to really land ground and pound from. Short of trying to get mount or frame up an arm triangle on the opposite side. Like, side control's not the best position. It's one that you really can't do a lot offensively from. It's a transitional move to either north-south or to try to get that knee on belly and slide across mount. I don't know. I just think that when you put knees on the floor of a downed opponent, it changes the fight, and really only changes the fight for the better.
I know that this is a tangent, but like, I'm going to kind of just explore it a little bit. If I'm in side control and I'm going to throw knees, like knees to the bodies are already legal, so we don't need to worry about that. If I'm going to try to throw knees to the head, I can almost guarantee after the first one, they're going to underhook my leg. And so that will kind of take away that knee, and it also will kind of threaten my base a little bit. So there's both sides to the coin there. I think that it would help the fight. If I start to look at other positions like north-south, you can find yourself in a lot of trouble in north-south. If you look at Tito and Guy Mesger, when Tito had him in that cradle, I mean, he was throwing knees and they were vicious. So you could end a fight with these knees on the ground too. But for the most part, there's only a few positions where you're going to be able to find them. The one position that I'm really kind of nervous about would be when one guy is kind of on the ground up against the fence and the other one is standing over him. If you think back to Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva, I think that you could do a lot of damage by essentially rape choking someone or just putting pressure on their head and then throwing knees from that standing position where they don't, with you holding the pressure, keeping them in that position, it could be for some serious damage. I mean, they're going to try to get down, try to get under you, or maybe try to get up. But I'm just, conceptually, I'm thinking that I'm going to be able to pin them there.
You bring up that Guy Mesger, Tito Ortiz position. I forgot all about that one. I mean, knees from the cradle position, that's some crazy stuff. I remember it looked like Guy was almost tapping in that position. Also, too, though, like, when do you see a cradle in MMA anymore?
Well, if there was like a use for it,
right,
like
yeah,
with the knees, that would entirely make it different, you know?
For sure.
Right now, if you put a cradle in MMA, you're essentially just tying up your hands.
Yeah. Some people complaining that the phone lines are down. They're not. Marco's on hold even. 844 Sherdog is the number. 844-743-7364 if you want to get in. If for whatever reason you cannot, email tjdesantis@Sherdog.com and on Twitter at tjdesantis at Caleb Dude. Looking at the chat over on YouTube. I appreciate everyone chatting and hanging out. Want to get to these other results, and then we'll try to get through some phone calls. If the phones aren't working, I can give you another number here, but they look like they're working, so we'll just move on from here. Cynthia Cavillo victorious over Pearl Gonzalez. Rear naked choke ends the fight at 3 minutes 45 seconds of round number 3. Thiago Alves back in a big way. He took out Patrick Cote. Cote also announcing his retirement. Alves really fought a fight that was, I hate to say vintage Thiago Alves because I think he is a changed fighter, and I don't think he's as powerful as he was when he was fighting George St. Pierre around UFC 100. But still, Thiago Alves showing that he has a lot of life left in him at 170 pounds. So it was nice to see the Brazilian in that form. Charles Oliveira, big upset for himself tonight, taking out Will Brooks. Rear naked choke comes at 2 minutes and 30 seconds of round number 1. Miles Jury made quick work of Mike De La Torre. TKO due to elbows and punches came at 3 minutes and 30 seconds of round number 1. Kamaru Usman victorious over Sean Strickland. Unanimous decision goes the way of the tough vet. Shane Burgos defeated Charles Rosa. TKO halts the contest. Rosa complains, but he was clearly taking punishment. While he never dropped to the floor, Todd Anderson saved him and rightfully did so. Patrick Cummins victorious over Jan Blachowicz. Interesting fight. Durkin was hurt early, but comes back to get a majority decision. Gregor Gillespie, huge KO of Andrew Holbrook. The end comes at just 21 seconds of round number 1. Desmond Green victorious over Josh Emmett. Split decision goes the way of Desmond Green. Caitlin Chukagian, victorious over Irene Aldana. Split decision goes the way of Chukagian. And Magomed Bibulatov, victorious over Janelle Lausa. That kicked off our evening on UFC Fight Pass. The decision goes the way of the Chechen. Again, 844-SHERDOG is the number, 844-743-7364. Let's go to the phones now. We have Marco from Waco. Marco, what's up?
Marco from Waco. ¿Qué pasa, TJ?
How are you, sir?
¿Qué pasa, Khalid? I'm not going to forget you too, man.
¿Qué pasa?
Hey, super weird week, man. I mean, after this week, I don't see the UFC is going to go back to Buffalo for another 21 years.
Man.
We got Tower Gate. We got fake boobies gate. We got knees to the head clusterfuck gate. 2 retirements. Anthony Johnson's retired. He says on the UFC interview now, UFC post show, that he was going to retire no matter what. And if this dude was already thinking about retirement, I don't think we got an honest to good effort from this dude. Because as soon as he got in trouble, he quit.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the knock on Anthony Johnson for a big part of his career. But with that in mind, too, like, if Anthony Johnson can't cut it at 205 or he can't beat the champion in his mind or the champions, maybe he doesn't like his matchup with John Jones, should that be a fight upcoming. I mean, maybe he's right. Maybe he has some dream opportunity for a job that has nothing to do with mixed martial arts, and he just wants to be out of the spotlight and do whatever it is that he wants to do. I hope so. I hope that's great. But if he doesn't think that, you know, the end game of being champion at 205 is possible, move up to heavyweight. Because you can't tell me that Anthony Johnson can't beat some of the heavyweight fighters inside the UFC. Is he going to be a champion? I don't know. Probably not. But I would absolutely adore seeing him fight those guys and think about matchups that we've never really thought about before. I mean, yeah, if he ran into a Verdum, I mean, come on. He probably gets tapped there. But, like, man, Anthony Johnson going out there and doing things as a heavyweight inside the UFC, I'm all about it. I'd much rather see that than him walk away.
You know, on his interview on the post show, it sounded like he's going either on a PME class and he's becoming a missionary, or he's going to join the army, man. Because it's so weird. He doesn't want to talk about it, but he said, we soon going to find out. Whatever, man. I want to throw this, my conspiracy theory of Tower Gate real quick, because I'm not blaming Daniel Cormier.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blaming the commission. Besides whatever happened today, on Friday, Daniel Cormier was at 206.2 pounds, goes to the back. 2 minutes later, comes back and weighs at 205.
Right.
You don't lose 1.2 pounds in 2 minutes.
Hey, Gina Carano did it.
A minute after that, Anthony Johnson comes and went at 203.8, exactly 1.2 pounds.
Right.
And why do they let Daniel Cormier weigh out twice, and the commission come out with this sorry excuse that, they got the discretion of letting title challenges, title champions, and main events will have an extra 2 hours and weigh in if they miss weight. The whole thing made no sense to me.
Here's my thing. If you can earn a title fight by getting an allowed 2 hours, an allowance of 2 hours to make weight, I think you should be able to do it as champion or fighting on for the title. Like, to me, there should be no real I wouldn't even care if you floated the pound at the title fight, because you can't weigh in at 206 if you're fighting for a 205-pound title. I mean, I get why it is that way, but if you're going to be able to do it as a contender on your way up the ranks, you should be able to do it in the title fight. My opinion is we should do everything that we can possible to make the fights happen and still allow the fighters to be safe. Reweighing, who's that hurting? If anything, it's hurting the guy that needs to cut weight for an additional 2 more hours. I don't see why. Again, protocol states, you got to do what protocol states, because I'd be a hypocrite if I was saying, don't follow the rules. But again, like, we got the fight because of it. Did Daniel Cormier legitimately lose 1.2 pounds in that quick of a time? I have no idea. The scale says so. The scale says so, and I'm not going to start throwing stones about a weigh-in that was 2,000 miles away from me. Also, too, can you push up on a towel and lose weight? like that? I have no idea. But I would make sure that if I was a regulatory body, a fighter standing on the scale is only touching the scale between beneath his feet. He's not touching anything else. Not touching a buddy, not touching a doctor, not touching anything. If you're going to move your hands anywhere, you move them above your head. I don't know why any of that. This is the thing that is crazy to me. Mixed martial arts has taken forever to become regulated in the state of New York. It's been regulated in a lot of states over the last 10 years, okay? No other state has had this many issues accepting and adopting the unified rules for mixed martial arts than New York. And I don't know if it's because things are changing. Like the whole hands to the grounded, or knees to the grounded opponent. I mean, Dan Miragliotta is not a New York exclusive referee, okay? Mark Ratner's cage side, Big John McCarthy's cage side, they all are cooks in the kitchen, right? And these are, like, as bad as it is that, like, no one knows what they're doing when it comes to this situation, that's not a New York thing. A lot of those players play in a lot of different states. So that's on everybody. But the breast implant thing with Pearl Gonzalez, very strange. Like, if you're going to even say that and say the fight's not happening, stick to your guns. Like, the whole flip-flopping, that's the problem. That's the problem. Dan Miragliotta flip-flopping on whether the strike is illegal or not is the problem. This stuff needs to get ironed out. The language needs to be better clarified in all of these rules, whether it comes to weighing in with a towel and pushing on it or whatever. Like, apparently we need to say that you can't touch anything while standing on the scale. That should be a no-brainer. Breast implants should either be illegal or legal. They should disqualify you from fighting, or we shouldn't be talking about it. Not, oh, hey, this is how it reads in boxing, so we're just not going to let you fight. Oh, wait, everyone got mad at us. You can fight. We don't care. Like,
yeah, never mind, Misha, they did fight in New York, too. I see that breast implants, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, let's sing, man. With all the weirdness and the UFC fan, weirdest week ever, Cormier is still the champion. The guy gets no love, but I'm loving the fact that he's embracing the heel. I'm looking forward for him fighting John Jones in July, and I think John Jones is still going to beat him. Well, I'll leave you guys next week.
Appreciate the call, Marco. What are your thoughts on all the oddities here, Caleb? Like, are you upset at all? Does something need to change, or do you feel that there is some sort of space for the quote-unquote growing pains of New York, or is this all unacceptable and everyone just needs to get their ass chewed?
Well, coming from my experience growing up in Minnesota and how everything was just a whatever we feel like doing, you know, and the rules really weren't enforced, and it was just everything was such a joke.
Yeah, that's true.
That it's almost like I'm used to this kind of thing, so I'm not even like throwing a fit like, oh, this is an outrage, you know, because it's like I've been at shows where they make up rules on the fly. I've been at shows where, if you remember, I think you might have been there, but there was a show in Minnesota where somebody framed up for an armbar, just like I said before, and the other guy grabbed him by his head and kneed him, knocked him unconscious, and they woke him up, got him stood up straight, and restarted the fight. Like,
Did they take a
that's
point?
the kind of thing that I'm used to.
Did they take a point?
I don't even know if they had points, but I highly doubt they took one.
I've seen a few 4-round fights in my time. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you're just so used to seeing things,
right?
You know, and it doesn't. It's like growing up in a dysfunctional family, you know, where you're like, oh, you mean other kids didn't live with this? Other kids didn't deal with this? This isn't a normal thing? Like, that's kind of what I have here. If I was somebody who had grown up playing a sport like swimming or baseball or something where everything is very clearly defined, everyone knows the rules, and you don't have things like this happening, I would absolutely be up in arms about this.
See, I played baseball, and I even umpired a season of Little League, and I had to memorize a stupid little green book. And there were a lot of, like, odd circumstances that were brought up to me, and we had to quiz each other on these guidelines, and you basically had to quote the rule book and talk about why you made the decision. I mean, the rules exist, and I mean they're on the UFC's website. You know, that's where I went and pulled the stat about not getting 5 minutes to recover from an illegal blow that's not a groin strike.
Well, the thing they kept mentioning, and you've mentioned it a little bit too, is that the rules still vary state by state. And they've mentioned it on the broadcast,
Okay.
like this place has adopted, this place hasn't adopted.
Yes.
So even the rules that are on the UFC's website, are those the actual rules?
Yes. Let me clarify. What they're saying about the unified rules, they're saying that they've adopted the new rules. The rules that are unified, like nothing has changed from state to state about everything that has always been. Like the 5-minute rule for a groin strike and not a groin strike, that's everywhere. No one has changed that rule. What they're saying is, they've quote-unquote adopted the unified rules here. Those are the rules that we saw in question tonight. Playing the game about a downed opponent, pawing your hand out with open fingers, that is a foul now. What else is there? I can't remember off the top of my head. But, I mean, those are the big two. So when they say that they've adopted the new rule, the more 10-8, the liberal 10-8s, those are the new rules per se. If like a state like Missouri has not adopted those rules, the illegal foul, the 5-minute thing, that's the same rule across the board. None of those rules have been changed. So when they talk about a state adopting the rules, they're talking about the rule changes, the 10-8 liberal scoring system, the one hand on the floor doesn't make you a grounded opponent rule, and then pawing your hand out with open fingers being a foul. Those are the three rules that are different from state to state. Everything else is the same.
And that's for every state then?
Yeah, every state that has accepted unified rules, yeah.
But what about the states that haven't? That's kind of what I'm...
No.
Does the UFC have to adapt to the state's rules? It's the question, TJ. That's the question.
No, Caleb. I don't think you understand. There's no state that has its own mixed martial arts rules that aren't rooted in the unified rules. The only differences from state to state that aren't in the unified rules that I know are the ones that I told you about. The 3 rules that need to be adopted that haven't been amended in all the states. And then there are certain states that require an additional weigh-in the day of the fight. Like Ohio was one where you could weigh in, but you couldn't weigh X amount more pounds than you weighed in at. They would do the reweigh. And when the UFC or WEC or Strikeforce would go to Ohio, Bernie Profado would say, we're just going to waive our second day reweigh. Other than that, there's no state that has rules on the books that aren't word for word.
So it's basically the state works with the UFC rules, not the other way around.
There are no UFC rules. There are the unified rules of mixed martial arts. Every state that has passed rules for mixed martial arts passed the unified rules, okay? They changed the rules last year, the 3 rules in question, and not every state...
I know what you're saying, but you're not understanding what I'm saying. Like, I understand that there's new, 2017 rules, but the rules that you're looking at on the UFC's website, no matter where they go, does that state have to follow those rules?
No, the UFC has to follow the state.
Or does the UFC have to follow the state's rules?
Right. Again, the state is regulating the event. The UFC is not regulating any event. The state can choose to change rules on behalf of the UFC, but the UFC is not governing or regulating anything unless they're in a place where there's no regulatory body. So there are no quote-unquote UFC rules. The rules are whatever the state has. Should the state want to waive a reweigh rule, that's on them. The UFC has no say or anything.
Then Herb Dean and everyone else and Mark Ratner and them, they know inside and out, no matter what state they're in, what the rules for competition of the UFC are.
Apparently not, because Mark Ratner said that the Tim Means knee was legal. So, no. They're supposed to. But again, for example, Strikeforce did not allow elbows, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that you could elbow someone in the face, and if the referee chose to take a point, you could probably appeal to the commission and say, he took a point away for an elbow. Pretty sure that the unified rules in mixed martial arts says that I can elbow you on the floor. Oh, but Strikeforce's rules say this. Oh, I didn't know Strikeforce's rules were on the books in your state. Can you please tell me and show me in your laws and guidelines of mixed martial arts that you regulate under that it says I can't elbow my opponent? Because it doesn't exist. Like, when you go to court, you play loopholes, right? And while going in front of a commission is not necessarily a court of law, because look at Nevada and look what they do at times. It's a kangaroo court over there. It's still a lot of red tape and a lot of arguing and trying to get people to see things your way. And it's all semantics and interpretation. And the rules are whatever the state has on file and what they passed through when they accepted mixed martial arts. And as far as I know, literally every state that has legalized mixed martial arts has done so based on the rules that were passed in 2001, which we call the Unified Rules, which was done in New Jersey. There's been amendments made, and athletic commissions have to ratify those amendments. Some states have, some states aren't, some states will not, some states are still going to. But the rules that are trying to be amended are the 3 rules we talked about, nothing else.
So, I mean, if everything is so consistent, I can kind of agree with you in that we really shouldn't have these problems.
Yes, we shouldn't have these problems. We really shouldn't. It's black and white everywhere. The bylaws are bylaws. I don't know. Let's go back out to the phones. We've got John from Alberta joining us. John, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, TJ?
Very good, sir. What's going on?
Yo, so I want to talk about Charles Oliveira real quick if I can.
Sure.
Sure. So the first time I saw him, I forget who he went up against, but he was undefeated at the time. And this is before he kind of got exposed as a guy who looks for a way out when he's hurting. And I thought that he could be a champion one day, like if he got with a good camp or whatever. And, if you look at the rankings, he's lost to the number 1 through 4 guys at featherweight. So I'm not ready to just say that Will Brooks is junk or he was hype, or because I still think he's an excellent fighter. I just think that Charles Oliveira is maybe growing into his potential now. I mean, maybe maybe missing weight was what he needed. And yeah, I want to get your take. And I have another question after this, but what does the UFC do with him? Because if he goes back down to lightweight, he's probably not going to be a champion there. And at 155, he's had mixed results at best. So what's the UFC going to do with Charles Oliveira, you think?
I think the UFC is going to get him fights, and Charles Oliveira is going to decide what the UFC is going to do with him because he's going to win fights or he's going to lose fights. 155's a fantastic division. It's been probably the most talented division in mixed martial arts for a very, very long time. I still believe that to be the case. I think at 155, to rise the ranks, capture a title, and hold on to that title, I mean, you're talking about the toughest division to do so. You have guys with insane power, insane speed, very good technique. You're laughing at me, Caleb. Why?
Oh, no, I'm not laughing at all. I have like so many things to say.
No, I mean, Charles Oliveira, I mean, he fits in well in the division. Will Brooks was a top shelf contender. So what is next for Charles Oliveira? Probably whatever was next for Will Brooks had Will Brooks won this fight. That's the great thing about matchmaking in the UFC. You match losers with losers, winners with winners, and everything sort of fleshes itself out. Caleb, what do you think they do with Do Bronx?
Oliveira has been inconsistent, but he's always been pretty good. You know, if I remember, that fight that you were talking about was the calf slicer that he hit from the back on the kid from Iowa, and that was super impressive. He's had some really, really impressive things, and he's had some not so impressive moments in his career too. But he's always been one of the top guys in my opinion. He's always been excited. I've always wanted to see him fight. He has really struggled with weight. I remember when he was looking at the rematch with Nick Lentz and he had to pull out because of the weight issue. And it's just a matter of getting that under control, whether he needs to go up a weight class or just get someone to handle his nutrition and his weight cutting techniques. Like either way, like I think that he's going to do well wherever he's at. Will he be champion? Who knows? Who knows? You know, I never would have thought that Michael Bisping would be champion, but here he is. And It really just, you know, I can't pull the plug on the kid. I think he's great. I am about ready to shut the door on Will Brooks, though. I feel like no one is acknowledging that he lost to Cowboy Oliveira just before this.
Right.
No one is talking about how bad he looked in that fight. And so even when they put his highlight reel package together, you know, it was like, yeah, he's 10-1. but they didn't really give mention to the Oliveira fight. And so they're still like pumping him up like he's this phenom coming over from Bellator and this champion, but he has not looked that great.
So
I think
no sort of leeway for the fact that Cowboy Oliveira failed to make weight in that fight, and Brooks took it regardless.
he did, but like you can still look good against a guy who missed weight. I don't think he looked good in that fight at all, and he was dominated tonight. And maybe it's just he has bad luck against guys named Oliveira, but I don't feel like Will Brooks is really delivering on the promises that he had coming into the UFC. And we could go back to Hector Lombard. It was the same thing where it was like, oh my God, this guy's a world beater. And then he got into the UFC and we found out, okay, he's got a little work that he needs to do. And I think that's what we're seeing with Will Brooks.
Looking at Twitter, people are helping me out. Looks like Diego Nunes was the Brazilian that we couldn't think of.
Yes.
Who fought Kenny Florian. And then at @T_Zog said, "Why are you on the radio if your opinion doesn't matter, TJ?" I'm on the radio. I'm on the radio to tell you that rules exist, so opinions don't need to matter. And if you're just joining us, you don't know what happened. Go back because we're on video now, so I assume that maybe I was turning red into the face. I was so hyped up and upset by this. I don't know how. I mean, there are referee courses out there. I don't know if Dan Miragliotta has taken them. I assume he has. And if he hasn't, he has enough on-the-job experience to know a lot of these things. Unfortunately for Dan Miragliotta, never been in this position before, at least not that I can remember. And if he was, it was handled better because I would remember just, again, to rip off Gorilla Monsoon, a miscarriage of justice here. This was not handled correctly at all. And if you're gonna complain about anything, don't complain about the fact that Dan Miragliotta stepped in and halted a contest because he thought there was an illegal blow. That's human error. That's forgivable. Get on the man for not following protocol and apparently not having any idea what protocol was in that position. And it didn't seem like anybody else around him knew what the protocol was. So let's go out to the phones. Johnny from Jersey joins us. Johnny, welcome to Beatdown After the Bell.
Hey, guys. How are you?
We're good, man. What's going on?
Hello?
We're good.
Nothing much. Just trying to enjoy the fights. But it's good that, at least Joe Rogan called Joe Miragliotta out there. Like according to Joe Rogan, it was pandemonium in there.
Yeah, but
let us not piss off Joe Rogan because he will call you out right on the spot.
I don't mean to cut you off here, but Joe Rogan was getting on Miragliotta for stopping the fight because of a legal blow, because what we found out on replay was a legal blow. Rogan didn't know it was legal when Miragliotta stepped in, and he was watching on a monitor. And I'll tell you, that monitor shot was a better shot than Dan Miragliotta had in the cage. So Rogan getting on Miragliotta, that's passion, that's fire, that's having the ability to slow the strike down frame by frame and look at it 6 different times, because Rogan had to look at it on replay, 4 times, 5 times? He was constantly asking for the truck to play it back. Then he got on Dan Miragliotta. Again, I'm not mad at Miragliotta for that. And I think Rogan, now that thing is sort of calmed and gone, the way that it did, he would probably also be like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have been screaming at Miragliotta for making that mistake, because we're all human and people make mistakes. But when you have the ability to look at a replay over and over again and request the view, you're going to get fired up. Dan made a mistake.
Well,
things happen.
I don't think that he was like, oh, you made a mistake, you idiot, or anything like that. I think what it was when he realized, no, this was a legal blow, he was like, we have to get this thing started. We can't be giving him 5 minutes. We can't be letting him recover. Like, come on. I think that was what he was.
That's true.
He was doing.
That's true. But again, following protocol, it doesn't matter. Rogan doesn't get to say, oh, you made a mistake, let's get it going. Referee made a decision because he saw an illegal blow. It needs to be treated as an illegal blow. And also, should Chris Weidman not be able to continue the way he wasn't tonight, fight should be called a disqualification, and your winner is Chris Weidman. That's really what is supposed to happen. An illegal blow was thrown by Gegard Mousasi. It was intentional. It wasn't an accident. He threw that knee on purpose. It was supposed to hit the head. It did. Okay? According to Dan Miragliotta, it was an illegal blow. Chris Weidman is unable to continue. Therefore, Chris Weidman should win the fight due to a disqualification at the hands, or knees, rather, of Gegard Mousasi. It's not awesome.
Yeah, and
not awesome because we know that it wasn't illegal, but again, protocol would state that Chris Weidman is your rightful winner.
And that kind of brings us back to what we said in the beginning too, was now the commission could have sorted it out. The commission could have overruled it, called it a no contest, referee error, whatever on the backside of things, but that's not what happened.
Let me read the rule here quickly for everybody and double check what I perceive to be the rule. Section 16, letter D states, if an injury sustained during competition as a result of an intentional foul as determined by the referee causes the injured contestant to be okay, there's not a space in be unable, so that looked like a weird word. Let me start from the beginning. If an injury sustained during competition as a result of an intentional foul as determined by the referee causes the injured contestant to be unable to continue at a subsequent point in the contest, the injured contestant shall win by technical decision if he or she is ahead on the scorecards. If the injured contestant is even or behind on the scorecards at the time of the stoppage, the outcome of the bout should be declared a technical draw. So technically, do we know what time the stoppage happened? I can look that up real quick here. It was at 3 minutes and 13 seconds of round number 2. So I guess technically you would ask the judges to file their scorecards, and you would go based on how they scored the contest there. I'm curious if a fighter takes a blow illegally and the fight is stopped, do you still take a point?
And going to the scorecards.
Right.
That's a good question.
Would you take a point? Hang on. Let me go back here. I mean, it's all here. If you bear with me, we can go through it. Is there a point deduction? Go ahead, Johnny.
I assume you would because the act's already been.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, hang on. Let me, all right. Fouls may result in a point being deducted by the official scorekeeper from the offending contestant's score. The scorekeeper, not the judges, will be responsible for calculating. Disqualification may occur after any combination of fouls after the flagrant foul at the discretion of the referee. So it sounds like it's up to the referee's discretion if he wants to just automatically disqualify the fighter for committing the foul intentionally. So what Miragliotta did here tonight, because playing it back in my head, he put Mousasi in a neutral corner and told him that he wasn't going to take a point. So Miragliotta believed that while the foul was intentional, it wasn't egregious enough to take a point, which, again, you're giving the benefit of the doubt. Or, I don't know. Like, if someone if you intentionally foul someone and it's egregious to where the doctor has to come in, shouldn't you have to take a point? Like, just think about that. You did something that's illegal. You did something that is illegal, Caleb, and the doctor has to come in and the whole entire fight is questioned. Based on that qualifying statement alone, you have to take a point, right?
Well, the more that I think about it, the more I think there almost has to be an entirely separate rule just for this. You know, if you look at other fouls, it's pretty clear cut. Whereas this, Mousasi really can't see whether or not the hands are down. And there's no like indicator light or anything. The referee's not saying hands are down or anything. So how does he know whether or not it's going to be a foul? He's kind of throwing shots in the dark at that point. Then it's like, was it intentional? Well,
yes.
I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
It was intentional because, like, it's the same thing with, like, a lucky punch. No punch is lucky. I'm throwing a punch at you, it's connecting, and you're losing consciousnness or whatever. No such thing as a lucky punch. No such thing as, really, honestly, a a strike that's not intentional. There's no unintentional strike. I can
But not necessarily the strike itself being intentional or not. Whether or not it was a legal or illegal strike would be the intention.
There is no intention on a strike, or no unintentional strike. The if I hit you below the belt, that can be unintentional. I didn't mean to hit you low, but I definitely meant to kick you. I threw a strike. Did I mean for it to be illegal, or did I not mean for it to be illegal? That's up to the referee. And again, Dan Miragliotta didn't seem to be 100% sure that there was a foul. And then when it was confirmed via replay that it wasn't a foul, it changed his actions. I'm sorry to harsh on this so much, but it's like, what happened is just, there's no explanation for it other than you didn't do what you were supposed to do. You let a lot of outside influences dictate everything. These referees start to ask questions. Herb Dean did it again in the Ellenberger and Masvidal fight. So what do I need to do? What should I do? He called a timeout and asked some people. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. It is. Because if Herb Dean didn't ask for permission, essentially, to restart the fight, we would have got a more definite conclusion between Jake Ellenberger and Jorge Masvidal. In this case, I would rather have Dan Miragliotta rule this as an illegal blow and apologize for it than what happened tonight inside the cage. It's like it's like an umpire in baseball calling a batter out, and then the managers come out and state their case, and then he goes, "You know what? You're right. You're right. Let's just do it again. Come on in. Let's do it again." Like, it's not.
Well, if they throw a strike in baseball, or it's called a strike, but it's not in the strike zone, they have video. Like,
no.
What do they do in that instance?
No, you don't argue balls and strikes. There's no video for balls and strikes. None.
Well, you have a video. Like,
yeah,
if you could show it, like,
but
do they just ignore it, or what happens?
Yes, there's no appeal process for balls and strikes, even if there is video. There's no appeal process. The only time a strike is debatable is if there's a check swing and the home plate umpire makes his decision, and then it is his discretion if he wants to appeal down to the first baseman or the first base umpire or the third base umpire to ask that umpire if he felt that the batter swung all the way through the zone. And that's on check swings.
I don't know.
That's it.
I kind of almost feel like that applies to this situation.
No, that works in baseball because you can defer to your umpire. That's in the rules. There's nothing in the rules that the referee can defer to anybody. There's nobody else making decisions besides Dan Miragliotta. There's no one he gets to call upon because that's the way it is in the rules. Yes, there's people there that he can call upon, but he can't act on it because the rules don't say that he can. It's black and white. It's not gray. There's no deferring.
I wonder if a possible solution would be to have more than one, like maybe have some cage side referees who he could consult with.
Yeah, Caleb, like I'm freaking out here because the rule is not to have more cage side referees. The rule is to allow Dan Miragliotta to look at the damn replay and make a decision based on it. You don't need to bring more cooks into the kitchen. You need to embrace the technology. You need to embrace the technology.
I'll agree with that too.
I mean, you're going to have more than one person making decisions, which is just going to cause dissension and disagreement and draw this process out even longer. What needed to be done is Miragliotta needed to treat the foul like a foul, go outside, if this was in the rules, go outside, look at the replay, and tell Miragliotta deems whether or not it was legal. It needs to be treated that it wasn't legal, that it's illegal, and then he can come back in and reverse the call. And here's the real thing that would be the sort of head-scratching thing here. If you did embrace replay and you felt, oh, man, the fight needs to continue, those were legal shots, you really going to let Gegard Mousasi get that position back again? And Weidman has to go back to the bear crawl? And you're going to go, ready, set, go? Because you can't take away the position from Mousasi if he didn't do anything wrong, so you got to restart him in that position.
Yeah.
That would suck.
I would say so.
That would be terrible to be Chris Weidman and be like, all right, guess I'm going to go back out here and get kneed in the head again.
Well, I mean, we've seen that with EBI and other things too. You could have a guy who's locked into a heel hook and he rolls out of bounds, and they're like, "All right, we're just going to move you into the middle and put you back on that heel hook." It's not a valid escape.
As a matter of fact, I recall, I don't know what match it was, but someone was locked in a deep heel hook, and they just kept rolling off the mat. And when they got off the mat, they broke the hold and said, "Well, you were caught in a heel hook. Fight's over. You weren't getting out. You rolled off the mat. Going off the mat while being locked in a deep heel hook is not an escape. You lose." That's what happened. But again, here's the thing that's interesting, and the big difference between EBI and the unified rules of mixed martial arts. EBI rules are Eddie Bravo's rules, and he can defer to Victor Davila, and they could do a fan throat vote if they want to, because they're not ratified rules on books with the state government. The unified rules are, like what EBI is essentially unregulated grappling. It's sanctioned and followed by whoever is refereeing that match, whether it's Victor Davila and Eddie Bravo, and that's it. The combat jiu-jitsu has some oversight via camo, but that's it. Like that's the only regulation that really exists at EBI. This is like a state-governed thing. Like the Athletic Commission running an event in New York is no different than the food safety panel that is ran by New York for restaurants. It's a government agency. There's protocol to follow. No different. I don't know. Johnny, anything else?
Well, I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on what is going to happen if, in the highly unlikely event that John Jones doesn't get the fight. So what's next for Cormier? Because Gustafson's got, I think, who's he got? Teixeira. And so, I mean, what's going to happen with Cormier? I mean, is Tiny Lister available?
Oh, geez. Zeus. Johnny, appreciate the call.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
I mean, it sounds to me, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, it sounds to me like John Jones and Dan Cormier are going to get their date. When is it going to be? Could be International Fight Week. I don't know. It would make sense. But, I mean, it's going to happen. Should it happen? That's an opinion. That's up for opinion. No protocol in the unified rules that says your light heavyweight champion, the greatest 205-pounder in the world, keeps messing up and making stupid mistakes. Does he get a title fight after each suspension? No protocol there, so you can have an opinion. Everything else got protocol. I don't know if I'm unjustifiably fired up. Like, sometimes I get fired up about things that people are like, why did you freak out over that? I think I'm right in this one, Caleb. Like,
well, you do have the rules backing you up on this. It is kind of like you're alluding to, is that everything else we say is an opinion, but those are the rules.
It's not even just rules. It's rules that are outside of the UFC's control. Like, the UFC had no say in anything tonight. A lot of people are like, oh, Joe Rogan was saying we should do this, and we should have just done that. Well, no, Joe Rogan doesn't have a say. He's a guy at the microphone. And I again, I'm not saying that Joe thinks he has influence, because I don't think he does. And I think that Joe would probably say the same thing now. And anything that Joe was saying, he was just saying, well, like, we act and react to things based on, like, the justifiable differences between right and wrong, right? Like, oh man, I could just go a completely different way with this, and maybe I will, because why not? You and I are from Minnesota, Caleb. We've said this. Mm-hmm. I'll remind everybody this. When I was a young kid, a boy named Jacob Wetterling was abducted, and no one found him for 27 years. They found his remains last fall. The man that confessed to the crime did so based on a plea deal, and he's serving like 20-some-odd years for child pornography, and will not serve a single day for Jacob Wetterling's murder. They basically said, if you confess to this, we won't charge you. So that's what they did. when we respond to that, when we react to that, we react on the difference between right and wrong, right? Like, he should not be let out of jail forever because he murdered a little boy. Again, that's a very, very dark thing, but that's how people react to things, right? We talk about what is right and what is wrong. I'm listening to this podcast called In the Dark, which is why this came up at the forefront of my mind.
Oh, sorry. Good. I'm glad you got started on that.
Oh, it's a fantastic podcast. But like, that's why Joe was reacting the way he was. I don't think that he was saying, hey, let's just disobey all the rules and restart this fight. He was saying it was a legal blow. It should be treated as such. And yes, it should, if we had the ability on the rules to look at the replay and make that decision. But we don't. It should have been treated as a legal blow. Why isn't that
in the rules? Like that, it seems like that technology has been around a long time.
Well, here's the problem about that. You would have to have a different set of rules for different events. The UFC has how many cameras? Tachi Palace has like 3, okay? So if you're going to have the unified rules and you're going to say you can go to replay, you have to put if applicable. And then you have to have a way to basically go, look, there's no cameras here. We don't get to go to a replay. Because if you get to go to a replay, Johnny in the front row is going to have his iPhone out or his iPad and be like, I got the footage. Look at here. You know, like, if you don't have cameras, you can't defer to a replay. If you do have cameras, who gives you the replay? Is it an athletic commission? Is it the production team? I would assume that it would be the production team that has a feed that can easily queue it up. I mean, Mike Fridley and I talked about this on Beatdown a few months ago. Replay is something that needs to be embraced, but not every show even has a production team. I mean, there's a lot of places in this country and in this world that have shows. They put on fight shows, and there's no cameras to be found. It's just a way to put on some fights, breed talent, and make some money for the promoter.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. We can hang out for a little while longer. 844-SHERDOG is the number. It's 844-743-7364. Get at us on Twitter at TJ DeSantis and at Caleb Dude. We're on YouTube tonight. We're also on the Mixler app chat over there as well. Rihanna writes in at Rock Single Life on Twitter, says, do you think Chris Weidman's appeal of his TKO would be the same as Tanya Evinger's appeal? Both came from referee interference. The big difference in that is Mike England took it upon himself to touch Tanya Evinger and change her posture and tell her she needed to move based on a lack of information. Tanya didn't do anything wrong. She was admonished for it. She was told to move. Mike England touched Tanya Evinger. It directly changed the course of the fight. What Dan Miragliotta did was not in any way incompetent, other than he thought he saw a foul that wasn't a foul. And here's where Chris Weidman would have the ability, in my opinion, to win an appeal, because the foul was no longer deemed a foul once Miragliotta was told that the replay showed that it wasn't a foul, and the entire course of actions that were supposed to be followed in that protocol of it being deemed a foul went out the window. Weidman has a case to appeal because no one followed the rules once they decided that it was no longer an illegal move, and in no situation at all during that period that he was recovering and they were checking on him should the decision of it not being a foul ever been made. It should have been treated as a foul the entire time. You need to follow the steps based on what happens in a fight when there's an intentional foul. That didn't happen. So yes, Chris Weidman should be able to appeal. He should be able to appeal based on everything that I just said, improper protocol based on everyone. So yeah, I think he should get this loss wiped away from his record. But the big difference, and I think the question from Rihanna again was, Is the appeal of his TKO, would it be the same as Tanya Evinger's appeal? No, not necessarily. Because what Mike England did was wrong against the rules 100%. What Dan Miragliotta did at first wasn't against the rules. It was a misinterpretation of what had happened, not a misinterpretation of the rule. He thought he saw a foul, therefore he acted as if there was a foul. After that is where Dan Miragliotta made the mistake, which is what you can appeal. You can't appeal for Miragliotta stepping in and stopping the fight because it was legal. You can't appeal on a referee making a mistake and then following the rules. You can appeal on the referee. Well, you can appeal anything, but to me, it's whether or not you're going to win, right? Like, the thing about appeals, that until Tanya Evinger's appeal happened, I always thought that appeals, for the most part, were pointless.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, if you appeal something, and if it's not, like, completely like a slam dunk, you're not going to win. If it's up to interpretation, you're going to lose. What Mike England did was not up to interpretation. What Dan Miragliotta did tonight was up for interpretation. And by that I mean when he stepped in and said, "There's a foul. I'm calling a halt to this contest. We're going to treat this like an illegal blow." That was not up to interpretation. What he did was correct there. He thought he saw a foul. Then he misinterpreted what he could do from there, and everything went to hell in a handbasket. I'm talking a lot, Caleb. I'm sorry.
I feel like something like this has happened before, and we need to circle back to it, where there was a body kick that was called a low blow, and then they realized it wasn't. How was that handled?
A body kick that was called a low blow. I don't know when was this?
Oh man, I can't remember. For some reason I feel like it was James Krause or somebody. But I'm just it's starting to come into my head. I might have it within a few minutes. But I remember it was a body kick, and they called it as a low blow, and then it turned out to be a body kick.
Oh, this is starting to come back to me as well. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I would need to know what changed the referee's mind, and if it was the word replay. Sorry, referee made a mistake.
I'm pretty sure it was the replay in that instance.
And again, that's not something that is supposed to be okay. Unless that state has, like, I would love to know what states have replay. Let me see in the unified rules over at the UFC if there's any mention of replay.
But I mean, what's interesting about that is that we know that this could happen in more than one scenario now, and something similar has happened in the past. So this is a talk that needs to be had.
Yeah.
This is a rule that needs to be fixed.
I think there are some states, I think, that can use replay, but I don't know which they are. Replay, MMA regulation. Nothing like Googling live on the radio. Okay, so February of this year, ABC's MMA Rules Committee recommends instant replay. So they recommended instant replay. Let's see here.
Just like 2 months ago.
Yeah. Okay. I'm reading the story from Bloody Elbow, written by Paul Gift. The Association of Boxing Commissions and Combative Sports Rules and Regulations Committee has recommended the addition of instant replay to the Unified Rules of Mixed Martial Arts, one of 5 recommendations that will go to the ABC's president, Mike Mazzulli, and likely forwarded to the executive and medical committees. So successfully passing through those committees could lead to a full vote by ABC members at their annual conference this July 24th through 26th. The referee would be the only one who could call for a review, not an executive director or commissioner, which is what you and I were talking about. Don't put any more, cooks in the kitchen. Replay could either confirm or dispel whether a foul was committed that brought about the fight ending sequence. And from there, the referee could hopefully make the correct call on an outcome of the fight, including a winner of the match, having the fight go to a judge's scorecards for a technical decision, Is the fight going to be a no contest or a disqualification? Committee Chairman Sean Wheelock told Bloody Elbow that committee members wanted to make sure replay wouldn't disrupt the flow of a fight. So the current recommendations, replay could not be used to restart a fight, to determine if a fighter tapped out, or to reevaluate a possible low blow or any other fouls that don't bring an ending to the fight. Instant replay is currently available in Nevada, but the committee's recommendation, if adopted by the ABC, would make its availability much more widespread and hopefully standardize it in a manner which it could be used. So it sounds like Nevada has replay ready to go, which is interesting because, I can't recall in all the fights that happened in Nevada, I can't recall a referee ever leaving the cage or looking at a screen and then making a judgment call on it. And unless it is this James Krause fight that you had mentioned that we can't really pin down if it was in fact James Krause or which fight it involved James Krause in. If you know, 844 Sherdog or on Twitter at TJ DeSantis at Caleb Dude. I've talked so much you've lost your will.
Well, no, there was a part in there when you're reading the rule where it almost makes it sound like they can't use it in this, where he would have to stop the fight, not for the illegal blow, but like stop the fight for stopping the fight.
Right. Yeah,
and then they could go back and reevaluate, not like mid-fight, was that illegal or not? Let's restart.
Here's where I could say that I think you could get away with it. Mergliata stopped the fight no matter what, right? Like, he was stopping the fight. So, in my opinion, it wouldn't be the replay that would be disrupting the flow of it. The flow has been disrupted because Mergliata had called a respite period to deal with an illegal blow. Now, in that time, should he want to defer to the replay, he could do that while the doctor is giving Weidman an examination that is not supposed to last more than 5 minutes. If Mergliata wants to call upon the replay in that time, if it was on the books, it's not the replay that is disrupting the flow of the fight. What is disrupting the flow of the fight is the fact that Dan Mergliata feels that he saw an illegal blow and they're following protocol. During that time,
okay, that makes sense.
Mergliata doesn't need to do anything while the referee or while the doctor is talking to the injured fighter, other than answer a doctor's questions or the fighter's questions based on what happens if the fight stops right now, etc. The medical well-being and welfare of the fighter, that's up to the doctor. So Mergliata doesn't need to be there for that. He could easily go over and look at that replay during that time. It's multitasking, and I'm sure there's going to have to be something on the books on whether or not Mergliata can look at this for more than X amount of minutes. But again, I'm looking at this in hindsight, painting it in an ideal way so it works in this situation. There's got to be a way that we can look at this, sit down, and come up with clear, defined ways on how to use replay to properly look at what happened here and, again, not disrupt the flow of the fight, etc.
I know that we've talked about this thing to death, but was the in-ring doctor giving him a sobriety test at one point? Because I'm almost positive I saw them trying to make him walk a straight line.
I don't know what concussion tests are exactly. Gravitational navigation, if you are concussed, I assume is impaired. So if they're trying to diagnose a concussion on Chris Weidman, having him walk in a straight line or something like that could definitely be a way to figure out if he's able to continue and properly defend himself and move. You don't want to restart a fight and then the dude takes 2 steps and all of a sudden he falls on his face because he's still rocked. But yeah, I don't know what that. I took to Twitter immediately and started freaking out, so I wasn't even really watching that much at that point. Once I heard Mergliata say, "Hey, look at the replay, come back and tell me," and someone was like, "Oh no, that wasn't Dan," I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was Dan Mergliata. Like, you don't have a New Jersey accent and not be Dan Mergliata there, unless it was Keith Peterson. But Keith Peterson sounds like he just got done with a metal concert. He talks like this. Mergliata talk like this. like 3-4 octaves lower, and he's got and then I heard some people say, "Oh, that was Big John McCarthy." McCarthy doesn't sound like he's from the East Coast. I mean, I'll go back and watch it. I mean, I have it, have a copy of it or whatever, because I ordered it on UFC.tv. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you and I are on the radio here. I have no idea what was said at the press conference. I have no idea what the UFC is doing. I need some help here.
Yeah, I'm pretty curious about that too. I think once we wrap up, I might even go search that out.
Yeah. If anyone wants to call us with like fighter bonus stuff, that'd be great. 844 Sherdog. Yeah.
Like the fight itself, I do have to say Chris Weidman was doing pretty good. I've never seen Mousasi fight. The way that he was striking was not the clear, crisp, technical striking that we're used to seeing from him. So you could tell that his game was off a little bit too. If there's a rematch, if they do have a rematch, I'll be equally excited to see this fight again.
I mean, that's sort of the great thing about it. We saw some things from both guys. Both guys look good at certain parts of the fight. I have no clear indication on who is more or less likely to win this fight going into a rematch. Like, we got a lot of action from both guys. Both guys had their moments, but I feel like we still didn't really learn much of anything. Weidman was able to get takedowns. He was able to stand in front of Mousasi and not get tore up. Mousasi, on his feet, was able to land some takedowns, or was able to land some strikes. Jab was working nice. He stuffed some takedowns. He got taken down, and he got back up. So, really, everything that both fighters did, the other fighter, at some point in the contest, countered effectively. So, at this point, I still feel that it's very even. Very even.
You know what the real win here is? And I said this to someone prior to the fight. I wish that this was 5 rounds. We might get a main event fight out of this now.
And it should be. It really should be. Weidman has 3 losses on his record right now. A guy that was unstoppable has 3 straight losses.
Ago.
Yeah. I would be very interested in a rematch between these two gentlemen. And like you said, we only got, a touch over a round and a half. If you don't slate 25 minutes for these guys, everybody loses. Everybody loses. Hands down. I need you to talk so I can answer the phone. Sorry.
Oh, that's what I'm waiting for. I thought you were going to go to somebody on the phone.
No, I haven't screened it. You know what? I'll just do it now. Hi, Beatdown. Who's this? Hello.
Yo, it's Dan from Oregon.
Hi, Dan. Welcome to Beatdown After the Bell.
Well, it's all muted on this line.
Is it? Hang on. Hello. Caleb, talk for me. Talk to Dan.
Are you there now, Dan? Dan from Oregon?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh,
right,
good.
perfect.
Where are you at from Oregon?
Eugene.
Got it.
In the good part of the state. Yo, were you guys wondering the post-fight bonus winners?
Sure, give it to me if you got it.
We got Charles Oliveira taking home $50K.
You are hammered drunk.
No, I'm a little high.
Okay, well,
Gregor Gillespie.
Man, you cannot say ours, Dan.
No, I can't.
Can you say
Charles Rosa?
Can you say
and Shane Burgos?
Can you say Rubber Baby Buggy Bumpers?
That's too many R's, man.
Say Oliveira again for me, please.
Oliveira.
This is my favorite thing ever.
Terrible, TJ. Poor guy.
I love Dan. Dan calls up.
TJ, say sometimes. Bag. Say bag, TJ.
I don't want to say bag. Bag. Isn't that how you say it? Bag? Bag. My bag. Yeah, my bag. My book bag. Sorry, Dan. I shouldn't make fun of accents or high speak.
You're good, man. I want to talk Mousasi. That cluster fuck of a card. Sorry.
I'll allow it tonight. Seriously. I've wanted to say it a few times, but I haven't.
Well, here's my breakdown. First of all, amazing matchmaking. That fight was back and forth, man. They're so close, and I saw Mousasi kind of taking over that fight a little bit in terms of momentum. And I don't know if I got the rules right or wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're supposed to have palm count on the mat with two of them to be a downed opponent. So those are nowhere near close to being illegal. They're totally legal, and Gegard got robbed of a good win there. They gave Wyman every chance to come back. 2 minutes on the ground, he still wouldn't get up. He couldn't pass the concussion test, so that's not a no contest. They called it right, in my opinion.
I appreciate the call. Sorry to cut you off. Just some newer information on, like, I'm a big precedent guy, Caleb, and someone brought up a situation where I'm trying to figure it out here in the Fight Finder and get this thing to work for me. Tell me what you know or what you remember about Roger Huerta and a guy that
John Halverson.
There
I know
you go.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. What happened? I remember there was a knee that Halverson claimed hit him in the face.
Yeah. He was on the ground and he was like, illegal knee. And upon the replay, it showed that it didn't hit him in the head. I believe it was like a collarbone. And what was strange, I remember in the post-fight that Roger said he intentionally threw it there, and I thought that was weird. I was like, just be honest. That's where it landed. You just threw a knee and that's where it landed. But he said that he intentionally threw it into like the shoulder collarbone area. But yeah, Halverson went down. I don't know if he acted like he was knocked out or what, but like he totally played it up, and then it turned out to not be illegal. They awarded the fight to Huerta, but
when did they award the fight to Huerta? Was it that
immediately?
night?
It was immediately.
So they looked
what I'm wondering is if it was not stopped for an illegal blow, but then they tried to make it seem like it was an illegal blow, and then they found out it wasn't. I mean, you could probably pull it up on Fight Pass and just watch the last, 30 seconds of it.
The whole entire fight's not even 30 seconds. The entire fight's 19 seconds long. Oh, yeah. Man. I'm excited. I'm going to pull this up right now.
And and it sounds like I'm really ragging on Halverson. I like Halverson. He's a friend of mine from Des Moines. Good kid. He's actually a little bit older than me, but still, good kid. I really like him. I would have liked to have seen him do well in the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him have a couple of good fights around the regional circuits and stuff, and I trained with him a few times. But the knee did not hit him in the head.
He was like Josh Neer's training partner, right?
Yeah.
And he was like a referee in Minnesota from time to time.
Yep.
Trying to get Fight Pass to load up here. Man, this is probably the first time anyone's watched a John Halverson fight on Fight Pass.
If you remember the Spencer Fisher-Josh Neer videotape I had, that was from Halverson.
I remember that, yeah. The handycam footage. One of the few copies of that fight that exist. I have no idea where it is. You borrowed it to me, and I never gave it back to you.
It wasn't you that I borrowed it to that I never got it back from.
No, you borrowed it to me, and then I gave it to the person that never gave it back to you.
Oh, okay. I suppose.
Man, Fight Pass is taking forever. If you want to get another call in, 844 Sherdog. It's the number.
Who brought this fight up? Because I just got to give them props for knowing their MMA.
Lactor Acid Monster on Twitter.
Yeah, that's a legit find right there.
Seriously.
I remember, I think I was in Canada when that happened and watching it at a sports bar.
We have so many crazy stories. Like, do you remember when Sam Stout just happened to fight in a volleyball court and we were there?
Yeah, I remember standing around talking to those guys, and he was like, I run 5 miles a day.
As a warm-up.
Yep.
And I was like, that's crazy. All right, Roger Huerta, John Halverson. Finally got it here on Fight Pass. My computer is slow. See what happens. It's loading. Little circle.
Can you legally play the audio, or do I need to talk, or do I need to be quiet?
It's just like news reasons. I think we can play the audio. We can cut it out if anybody has a problem with it. I'm fast forwarding. Man, everything looks so old. It's like not that long. I mean, it's kind of long ago, but. All right, fast forward. There we go. All right.
Good kick by Halverson. Goes down. Burt on top. Good scramble. Knee to the head while he was on the ground. He was warned by that. Wow. Unfortunately, he took it. He's in big trouble.
It's going to be over quickly.
That's going to be it.
It is all over. Roger Huerta.
You know, what's unfortunate, though, it is the illegal knee that caused that damage.
All right.
I would like to see that replay really quick.
See, so it's Joe Rogan saying it was illegal, but the referee never really called it.
Right.
There.
Referee never called it. I mean, I don't know if this was ever treated as anything but a legal blow. Joe Rogan is saying that it's illegal.
Right.
But the referee, I believe, is Steve Mazzagatti. Let's see here. No, it's Eve Levine.
Halverson throws the kick to take him down. There's a scramble. Here's the knee. Bang! Right there in the face. He flattens out. He's hurt badly right away.
That is weird that he flattened out from a shoulder strike.
It's because he was selling it, dude.
You shouldn't want to. I mean, yeah. It's weird to have that thought process though in a fight. I just got kneed. I'm gonna sell this like it was in the face.
Well, it might not be that, you know. In his mind, sort of like Chris Weidman or Alistair Overeem, they've made comments before about like, oh, this happened in the fight. In their mind, maybe that's what happened. So it's not a lie to them. You know, maybe he actually even felt pain in his face, but it was just a manifestation of what he was thinking. You never know. Brain is crazy.
All right, I don't. Joe Silva's in there talking to Halverson. All right, let's see what they say.
Ladies and gentlemen, referee Eve Levine has called a stop to this contest at 19 seconds.
Yeah, no, it was never treated as anything other than a legal blow. So
No, he gets asked about it in the post fight, he'll make comment on it too.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it said, what about an early Roger Huerta fight where it looked like a knee to the head on the ground, but then it was changed after? Nothing was ever changed. Treated as such. All right. I think everyone's sick of me talking about the same thing over and over and over again. Jesse Denis on Twitter says, memory's hazy, but there was a replay cluster F when Alessio Sakara punched James Irvin in the eye. Claimed he was poke. I don't remember that. Replay showed that it was a punch, and the bout was called the TKO for Sakara. All right, now we're going to pull this up. Look what you've done, Caleb. This is all your fault.
You got all those old school hardcores, man. They'll hit you with all the facts.
See, that's why this show is so great. You ask, and the SRN contingent brings the real information. Like, this is why decisions like this are so important, because it sets a precedent. Now, let's find here. Alessio Sakara, James Irvin. Here we go. From UFC Live 1, March 21st, 2010. 7 years ago already. My goodness. 2010 shouldn't be like a decade ago. Let me say that. Someone needs to slow this time thing down. All right. Fast forward. Okay. Definitely looking at a replay. Let's see here.
Sakara, victorious tonight.
All right.
No doubt about it. Fist tight.
All right.
Yeah, but it really looks.
All right. Man, they look at this replay for a long time. Hang on. There we go. They say the fight is over because of a TKO due to a punch that rendered James Irvin unable to successfully and intelligently defend himself. So, was that decision made via replay from an outside source? I have no reason to believe so. If it was, it's wrong. But I have no reason to believe so. Therefore, there's no mistake on how it was handled. Now it's just going to be an argument on when you can look at a replay, how you should make the decision that you're going to go to replay, And in what circumstances does looking at the replay not impede the flow of the fight? So now I'm just over it. I'm bored with it.
Yeah, we've definitely talked it to death.
But I think it's important. I think it's important because the way that it was handled tonight was disgusting, to say the least.
Yeah, we don't want something like this happening again. As if the middleweight picture wasn't already on hold enough. Now We've got, 2 number 1 contenders waiting on hold. We've got Weidman and Mousasi probably going to rematch again to try and get into a title shot at some point. And then we've got Bisping and GSP kind of holding everything up. Like this, if I were a middleweight fighter or a middleweight contender at this point, I don't know what I would be doing with my career. Would it be, okay, eventually I'm going to get a title shot? Would it be I'm going to continue to fight and possibly lose the momentum I have? Like, what do you do when you're in that position?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, right? Like that's the decision that you have to make. And for some people that continue to fight, sometimes it backfires. For others, it works. It wasn't completely up to him, but Tyron Woodley decided not to fight, and he got his title fight. Other fighters have fought, and they never got their shot. I don't know if Carl Parisian had the option to fight or not fight when he had to pull out of his bout with Matt Hughes for a title. But he ended up fighting, and he fought Diego Sanchez, and he didn't get that opportunity. And Carl Parisian was never really Carl Parisian again. So,
yeah,
very difficult. Very difficult. Bright side, again, this fight was very even between Mousasi and Weidman. They should rematch. I'd like it.
5 rounds. 5 rounds.
5 rounds. Put it on FS1. Put it on Fox. Put it anywhere. Main event. Make it happen. Needs to happen. So, any closing comments, Mr. Quinn?
I'm really disappointed about the fight, but I'm again really looking forward to the rematch. So I'm kind of just the same place I was at yesterday.
Yeah.
Just waiting to see Weidman and Mousasi fight.
Yeah, it's. I mean, again, I don't know if it would be better or worse if Chris Weidman was clearly winning the fight or clearly losing the fight, and then this happened. Because if he had not had some moments in this fight, we would have just said, well, Gegard Mousasi had handled him in the first round. He was clearly on his way to the second round, winning that. So he would have essentially won the fight. So we don't need to see a rematch. Gegard Mousasi, while he technically didn't deserve the win in the fashion that he got it, he was on his way to getting it regardless. We can move on with Mousasi getting a legit win, even though it wasn't legit. But because Weidman did well, we have to see it again, right? We have to.
And think about this too, kind of going back to what I was just saying. Let's say Weidman won this fight. What does he do next? Yoel's waiting. Jacare's got to fight, and then he's going to wait. And Bisping is tied up with GSP. All of a sudden, Weidman's on the shelf for at least a year. With this, he'll be able to continue fighting a top contender, and get a second paycheck out of it while everybody else is sitting on the bench.
If Weidman would have won this fight or even legitimately lost this fight, he's not waiting around to fight any of those guys. Those guys are all ahead of him at this point. Even if he beat Mousasi, those guys are all ahead of him at this point.
Yeah, that's what I mean, but they're not going to be fighting him.
Yeah, so he'll fight someone below him. Chris Weidman's not going to sit on the shelf. He'd fight whomever's below him. Someone would try to make a name on Weidman. He'll fight somebody. Like, this division is the only time anybody really sits and waits is if they're waiting for a title fight, or if they are only going to take a fight with someone ahead of him. I mean, where's Weidman in the rankings? Where was he coming in tonight? 4?
4, yep.
Okay, so if you're 4 and you've lost 2 of your last 3, he's lost 3 of his last 3. If he'd lost 2 of his last 3, he still needs more wins. He doesn't need to fight a contender in a title elimination bout. Even if Weidman had won tonight and then he fought Jacare, he's still not ready for a title fight, in my opinion. So it's a
really?
tough.
Even if he beat Jacare?
If he beat Mousasi and Jacare, depending on whether or not Romero had a title fight. I mean, he just lost to Romero. You know what I mean? Like, He's not going to get a title fight over Yoel if Yoel hadn't fought for a title. And if Yoel was the champion, maybe. But you don't get a title fight, especially with a guy that is a champion that beat you within a year of just losing to them.
Is Jacare in line for a title shot then?
Who's Jacare have up next?
He's fighting somebody below him, but I think it's just to keep him busy.
I mean, Jacare lost to Yoel Romero.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, whether it was correct or not. Yeah, I mean, Jacare's not going to get a title fight before Yoel. I mean, he shouldn't. But George St. Pierre's fighting for the title, so who cares? Pretty sure that the winner of this fight is going to fight Anderson Silva, and then the winner of that fight is going to fight Rich Franklin, because that's the logic in this. We're just getting old dudes to fight for middleweight championship belts in the UFC.
Bring back Ace. I like it.
All right, now I'm just starting to be curmudgeon-y. I got to go see the Easter Bunny in the morning, so I should probably get out of here. You ever go see the Easter Bunny as a kid?
No.
Really? You didn't go to the mall?
No.
And there was a...
Well, I mean, I
bunny?
would be at the mall and see an Easter Bunny person, but like my parents didn't take me to do stuff like that.
You never waited in line to see the Easter Bunny?
No.
Wow.
And I'm not sure that they did the Easter Bunny when I was younger. I think they only did the... No, I remember it now. Yeah, they had the Easter Bunny. This wasn't something we did.
Yeah. Hey, you see this right here? I don't know if people put two and two together. I'm kind of announcing that here. Don't say it, because I want people to watch it on YouTube. But that's a big deal, I think. April 24th.
I'm excited for that. I can't... Like, it's not coming through that clear. I literally thought it said Radio K on there. And I was
wow.
oh, I know Radio K.
Yeah, 7:70 a.m. in Minneapolis, St. Paul. But yeah, here. For the benefit of everyone online. That's pretty exciting business.
Really enjoyed the one show that you guys did.
Yeah.
With Crown Gracie and the Flat Earth guy. Like, yeah. I really enjoyed that.
Well, now everyone knows. Eddie Bravo Radio, April 24th. I'm stepping off a plane from Nashville and then coming in studio to talk to Eddie Bravo and his special guests. So, exciting business. If you missed any part of this broadcast, all access panel at Sherdog.com, iTunes Music Store under podcasts, SoundCloud.com/the-Sherdog-Radio-Network. I'll be back on Monday for another edition of Beatdown with Mike Fridley. Caleb Quinn, I think you and I will be back on the SRN next week for MMA Evolution. If we got
to get our monthly show in.
I know. It's been crazy. It's been absolutely nuts. So we better do it next weekend, because in a couple weeks I'll be gone in a land far, far away. So, all right. He's Caleb Quinn. I'm TJ DeSantis. Appreciate you listening. And Caleb will talk to you next week for MMA Evolution.
All right.
Hang on. Too many things going on over here. Press that button. Press that button. Missed any part? All access panel at Sherdog.com, iTunes Music Store, under podcast for Caleb Quinn. I'm TJ DeSantis. You just got beat down after the bell. Change the rules. Knees to the head of a grounded opponent. Look at video. Technology. Embrace it. Good night. See ya.
The preceding podcast was a TJ DeSantis production. Comments, questions, and inquiries can be directed to DeSantisProd@gmail.com.